think one of the biggest problems we face today is that we're surrounded by other people's idea of what success looks like. Open social media for 5 minutes and you've told what car you should drive, what your body should look like and where you should live, how much money you should be making and what your relationship should look like. Everyone has an opinion about the life you should be living. The problem is, if you're constantly consuming other people's vision of success, you rarely stop to ask yourself a much more important question. What do I actually want? Not what my parents wanted for me, not what my friends are chasing, not what society tells me success should look like, but what genuinely matters to me. And I don't think many people have ever sat down and asked themselves that question. They simply inherit goals from the world around them and spend years climbing a ladder they never intended to climb. Lately, I've been using my journal to work through that exact question, and it's completely changed the way I think about my future. So today, I'd like to show you the exercise that's helped me design a life that actually feels meaningful to me. Hopefully it encourages you to do the same. The first thing I'd encourage you to do is remove yourself from as much noise as possible. Leave your phone inside, turn the television off, don't put a podcast on in the background, and don't ask ChatGPT what your perfect life should look like. Find somewhere quiet. Grab a journal and simply sit down in your own thoughts. At first, you'll probably find it uncomfortable. We're so used to consuming information that sitting alone with your own thoughts almost feels unnatural sometimes. But if you stay there long enough, something interesting starts to happen. The noise begins to settle, and your own voice becomes much easier to hear. I found that some of the clearest thoughts don't come when I'm trying to force them. They come while I'm just sitting there outside with a coffee, walking without headphones, or simply writing whatever comes to mind. And that's where the exercise begins. Once you find somewhere quiet, I want you to start writing down different areas of your life. I break mine into sections like physical, mental, emotional, financial, and spiritual. But you can include whatever categories matter most to you. Relationships, creativity, family, career, it doesn't really matter, right? You know what you want. The goal isn't to copy someone else's template. The goal is to build your own. Then ask yourself a simple question once you have those categories. If nobody else had an opinion, what would I want this part of my life to look like? And that may be surprisingly difficult to answer. Take the physical side of life. Social media might tell you to chase the biggest bench press, six-pack abs, or the perfect physique. But when I really thought about it, I realized those weren't actually my priorities. What I want to do is move well, move healthy. I want to stay healthy for as long as I can. I want to hike mountains, squat comfortably, play sport, play with my future children, and never feel like my body is preventing me from living the life I want. And that's what health looks like to me. Your answer might be completely different, and that's okay. The point isn't to arrive at the same destination. The point is to discover your own. The same goes for finance. What people think about financial goals, they often imagine luxury cars, expensive watches, or enormous houses with, empty rooms that you don't visit. But when I sat down to write about it, I realized I wasn't chasing those things. What I actually want is freedom. Freedom to provide for my family, freedom to give generously, freedom to spend time doing meaningful work instead of constantly worrying about paying the bills. Money is not the destination. It was simply a tool that helped me live according to my values. The more I wrote, the more I realized that almost every goal I had was pointing towards something much deeper. Once you've written down what matters to you, don't stop there. Ask yourself why it matters to you. Why do you want that in your life? Why does the goal matter? Why is the dream important? Sometimes you'll realize that what you thought you wanted wasn't actually the destination at all. Maybe you don't want a bigger house. Maybe you just want a peaceful home. Maybe you don't want fame. Maybe you simply want your work to have meaning. Maybe you don't want the money. Maybe you just want enough to stop living with financial stress. The deeper you keep asking why, the clearer your priorities become. And then once I reached the spiritual side of my journal, it surprised me the most. At first, I treated it like every other category. I wrote spiritual at the top and expected it to sit alongside everything else. But the more I reflected upon it, the more I realized it wasn't another part of my life. It was actually the foundation of it all. If I truly believe that God created me with a purpose, then that changes how I think about my health, my relationships, my work, my finances, and the way I spend my time. It changes the way I define success. Instead of asking, how much can I achieve? The questions slowly become, how can I faithfully use what God has entrusted to me? For me, that is where everything starts to come together. I realized that designing my life wasn't really about creating the most comfortable or impressive version of it. It was about creating a life that honors God and serves the people around me. Everything else has become secondary. And the beautiful thing about writing it all down is that it doesn't become another notebook sitting on your shelf. It becomes a blueprint. Every month you can come back to it and read through those pages again. Some things change, some goals disappear, others become more important than I first realized. And then just ask yourself the simple question, am I actually moving towards the life I've written down? If the answer is yes, keep going. If the answer is no, just make adjustments. Your journal becomes less of a diary and more of a compass, something that keeps pointing you back towards the life you genuinely want to build. Whenever the world starts pulling you in different directions, just come back to the journal. And I don't think the purpose of this exercise is to create a perfect life, and I don't believe a perfect life exists this side of eternity. I think its purpose is something much simpler. It's to make sure you're living intentionally instead of accidentally. Because if you never decide what matters most to you, the world will happily decide it for you. It will tell you what success looks like, it will tell you what to chase, and it will tell you what's valuable. And I think there's something freeing just sitting there quietly with a journal, asking honest questions, and allowing yourself to discover what truly matters to you. Not what everyone else wants for you, but what God is calling you towards. So grab a notebook, find somewhere quiet, turn off the noise for an hour, and begin writing. You might be surprised about what you discover. Let me know how you go with it or if you do it, and what the perfect life may look like to you. As always, I'm Jaden Conley, and thank you for watching.